What the garden tries to be is a center for cultural education in some respects, so that when the visitor comes to the front gate of the garden, they enter into a different culture. They come in from the Western culture and they step right into the Eastern culture. And for that hour that they wander through the garden on the pathways, they have the distinct sense that they're walking on the old pathways of gardens in Japan. And that's what it's meant to be here.
In the early 1960s, a group of visionary Oregonians decided to create a Japanese garden on the site of the old, abandoned Washington Park Zoo. The garden was intended to foster understanding and fellowship between Oregon and Japan.
Professor Takuma Tono, who was hired to design the garden, was well known both in the United States and Japan. He brought to this garden the tradition of garden design from Japan while incorporating it into a Northwest setting and giving us a garden that all cultural backgrounds can relate to. It is a Japanese garden, but it's not a garden in Japan, so it has the ability to assuage and to give comfort and enthusiasm, to create new ideas in persons because of their being here. And I think that's probably what Tono wanted. He was a man who believed in the garden was not just for the mind, it was for all the senses, that the plants and the stones, the sand, the water, the backdrop were a way of incorporating the natural world into an intense experience.
Portland's Japanese garden has many different characters. It contains several distinct gardens, and its appearance changes dramatically with the seasons. The tea garden is one of the most Japanese parts of the garden. This garden is the setting for the tea house and, on occasion, the tea ceremony itself. The garden is an integral part of the quiet ritual of the tea ceremony. Elsewhere in the garden, young children take their first steps in the way of tea in the pavilion. flat garden was the first garden to be created by the original designer of the Japanese garden.
Well, what Professor Tona did, he divided this up into special areas. We have 4 or 5 different areas here in the garden: the flat garden, the pond garden, the sandstone garden, and other gardens in different individual gardens. And he said Americans could come into the garden here and wash themselves, and cleanse themselves from the water basin. And he said leave all their worldly thoughts behind. And that's what you should do when you go out in the garden or out into the woods. Relax and just take part of what's available.
In evening sunlight, the faint shadow of the dragonfly's wings.
The Japanese garden hosts several special events throughout the year. In October, friends of the garden gather for the moon viewing evenings, time spent in quiet contemplation.
Everything in the garden here is touched by a human hand, pruning or just cleaning, shaking dead leaves off. I can't imagine even the big fir trees that you see around here, they've all been thinned out, pruned. Every tree wants to be beautiful, so there's no such thing as an ugly tree. It depends on how you prune it. You can bring out the positive characteristics of that tree.
The gardeners gird vulnerable pine trees for winter with yukizuri, spars and ropes that support the branches against snow and ice.
How harsh it sounds, the splattering of hailstones on my umbrella hat.
The winter snows change the garden's balance between culture and nature. The greens of plants and shrub are hidden, whilst the human structures of the garden are accented by a topping of snow. The garden rests quietly.
crunch of footsteps on the rain-soaked gravel. Bullfrog croaks.
The natural garden, which has a kind of design chaos about it, which fools the visitor because it looks chaotic, but it is in fact quite controlled. And so it is probably the place where you see hide and reveal, where you're walking along, you seem enclosed, you turn a corner, something reveals itself. It's the one garden where you really do nothing but walk through it. The other gardens, you have more vistas. But there, it in turns is intimate. Sometimes it looks alpine. Sometimes it looks almost marsh-like. So it is probably the garden that best integrates the Northwest look with Japanese style of gardening.
The dry landscape garden exists for personal contemplation. Its stones and sand suggest landscapes of mountains and water. In Japan, these subtle gardens are often attached to Zen temples or monasteries. This garden lies below the natural garden, but is very different in style. A Japanese garden is a highly symbolic place. Small trees stand in for larger ones, and stones may represent fish, turtles, or cranes. The garden comes alive to the open-minded visitor.
Summer heat. Removing the lid from the water jar.
In almost all Japanese gardens, all styles of gardens, there is, if not a real interconnectedness of water and land, the implication of it. One of the great Zen contemplations is to stand and listen to water as it passes. So, in essence, water is a kind of adjunct to the landscape, but without it, there would be a kind of dullness. It wouldn't be the truth.
The garden's peaceful air masks the hard work of maintaining the designer's precise vision. The garden is designed to make use of borrowed scenery, or a shaké, vistas from the surrounding hillsides, to complement and magnify the garden scenes. Many scenes in different parts of the garden are the result of close cooperation between Portland, her sister city Sapporo, and other Japanese friends of the garden. Lanterns do much to humanize the landscape. The garden has always been a place for the celebration of Japanese values and culture.
The Obon Spirit Festival is a celebration of that 3-day period of spending time with our ancestors here on the earth. So there's dancing and there's music and there's singing and there's a lot of joy because of the 3 days that we've spent. And then it's time to very solemnly and quietly send our relatives and ancestors back up into the heavens. And there's a candle that floats on the water of the upper pond. And as it goes out into the water and the flame takes the smoke higher, the smoke elevates the ancestors back into the heavens where they belong.
The garden's conversation with the seasons never ends. Together, they meet with visitors in favorite scenes and places, again and again.